a special court proceeding on a proposed Alberta separation referendum question.
It's only an opportunity in the event that people vote yes to the question, because in the event that people vote no, which is still a possibility, it becomes a dead issue.
Alberta just dropped a political bombshell on November 22nd, and it feels like the entire country jolted awake overnight, suddenly realizing that the ground under Canada might be shifting faster than anyone expected. For years, talk of independence floated around like background noise, something people mentioned when they were angry about Ottawa or frustrated with taxes, but never something anyone believed could truly happen. But this time, something feels different. Alberta just received a critical legal green light.
People in Alberta are fed up with being governed by idiotic politicians from Quebec and Ontario that do not understand our province.
To proceed with the first steps toward an independence referendum. And the shockwave from that decision has rattled Ottawa, energized Alberta's political base, and drawn nationwide attention in a way we haven't witnessed in decades. What was once dismissed as bluster, political theater, or fringe commentary is now being treated as an unfolding crisis, because Alberta is closer than ever to formally asking its people one electrifying question. Should this province remain in Canada, or should it become a sovereign nation?
And that is why Albertans are so frustrated with the direction of our country.
And the magnitude of that possibility has set off a chain reaction of political panic, legal scrambling, and grassroots mobilization that no one, certainly not Ottawa, seems prepared to confront. What makes this moment especially explosive is how simple the mechanics of triggering the referendum actually are.
Possible referendum question about Alberta separation was part of a special court hearing today. At the request of Alberta's chief electoral officer, a judge is now considering whether the question violates the Constitution.
The threshold is just 177,000 signatures. In a province of about 4.5 million people, that's a shockingly attainable number. It doesn't require overwhelming support. It doesn't require half the province. It doesn't even require a massive organization with tens of thousands of volunteers. It simply requires momentum. And right now, momentum is exactly what Alberta has. And Ottawa knows it. That is why the tension feels so thick. The chief electoral officer must now decide which rules apply.
There is a process in place. The chief electoral officer now has to decide whether the old rules or the rules created for separatists by Danielle Smith will apply to me. He will make that decision, and then we will take it under consideration whether we agree with it or not.
Whether the older, more traditional referendum process will be used, or whether the newer, reduced threshold rules introduced under Premier Danielle Smith will set the standard. That decision alone could determine the speed and trajectory of Alberta's entire independence movement. No one knows which direction it will go, and the uncertainty has electrified the province in a way no political issue has in years. What used to be a distant hypothetical conversation has suddenly become procedural, legal, strategic, and immediate. The courtroom at the center of this storm has become a stage for one of the most dramatic political battles in recent Canadian memory. The proposed referendum question, do you agree that the province of Alberta shall become a sovereign country and cease to be a province in Canada, is now under judicial review to determine whether it aligns with constitutional requirements. For supporters of independence, this legal review is not an obstacle. It's the next inevitable step in a plan they've been waiting years to execute. The Alberta Prosperity Project, one of the groups behind the push, has found itself facing off against federal authority, constitutional lawyers, First Nations interveners, and multiple layers of legal challenge. The tension inside those hearings is palpable.
She does support the rights of Albertans to have their say in matters of constitutional import.
supporters show up early. Opponents pack the back rows. Every argument, every objection, every ruling is being watched and dissected like a high-stakes thriller, because that's exactly what this has become. A province testing the limits of federal power, and a federal system desperately trying to maintain control. What's surprising is that the courtroom delays meant to slow the process have had the opposite effect. Rather than weakening the movement, they've intensified public interest. People who have never shown interest in provincial politics are suddenly watching live streams, reading court summaries, and debating constitutional law at their kitchen tables.
Our government wants people from all industries, communities, and walks of life to shape the direction that this great province will take in the future.
Every postponement, every legal motion, every added intervener has fueled the perception that Alberta's push is not only real, but dangerous to the status quo. If independence were truly impossible or laughable, critics ask, why are so many actors rushing to intervene? Why is Ottawa devoting so many resources to managing a process that hasn't even reached the signature gathering phase? Every attempt to stall becomes another talking point for independence supporters. Every objection becomes proof that Alberta's power is underestimated. Every delay becomes a rallying cry. Premier Danielle Smith's legislative move, months earlier, now appears almost prophetic. By lowering the threshold for citizen-initiated referendums to just 10% of the last election's votes, she transformed a theoretical movement into a strategic mechanism.
This entire country is run on behalf of Central Canada for their benefit and our detriment. And, people really need to internalize the value of freedom.
Most people shrugged when the rule changed. Few realized how fast it could be used. But after the 2025 federal election, where liberal victories reignited Western frustration, separatist sentiment surged to around 36% in Alberta. That's more than a third of the province openly expressing doubt about the country's direction. Suddenly, that legislative tweak wasn't just a footnote in provincial politics. It was the doorway to an entirely new national crisis. And if the legal battles weren't enough, the financial storyline behind Alberta's frustrations is intensifying the situation. Alberta's economic power has always been significant, but seeing the numbers laid out in front of the public again has struck a nerve. The province's GDP, around $353 billion, combined with Saskatchewan's $180 billion, pushes the combined economic weight of the region into territory usually reserved for mid-sized nations. Alberta alone contributes billions more to federal revenue than it receives back. Citizens hear that roughly $3,700 per resident leaves the province each year through various fiscal transfers. People watch pipelines stalled, energy projects delayed, and regulatory fights multiply. And the frustration isn't theoretical, it's financial. When you mix financial frustration with political momentum, movements like this don't fade. They ignite.
Therefore, any citizen-initiated referendum question must not violate the constitutional rights of First Nations, Métis, and Inuit peoples, and must uphold and honor Treaties 6, 7, and 8.
Supporters of independence emphasize that Alberta's financial clout is not symbolic. It's leverage. It's bargaining power. It's the reason the independence conversation isn't dismissed anymore. The argument being circulated isn't about turning Alberta into an isolated nation. It's about using economic strength to make political decisions that reflect local priorities. Groups like the Alberta Prosperity Project promote projections suggesting that independence could significantly increase provincial surpluses due to reduced transfers and expanded resource development. Whether critics agree or not, doesn't change the emotional impact those numbers have on ordinary citizens who already feel economically ignored. Every dollar that leaves the province becomes a symbol. Every stalled project becomes a grievance. Every federal policy becomes a reminder of what supporters feel they could do differently.
That's, I think, the government of Alberta is doing the right thing to step in. And by the way, you know, there's a precedent for this, in a way, which is that in the early 1970s, Peter Lougheed, who was very much a free market guy, stepped in, created a Crown corporation, the Alberta Energy Corporation, to help capitalize the early oil sands developments and technology, because he understood the enormous value to Alberta, but that it wasn't yet.
And then there's the psychological shift unfolding across the province. For decades, federal politicians treated Alberta's independence discussions like empty noise, never imagining it would progress past disgruntled talk radio callers or small protest groups. But now, those same federal authorities are watching thousands of people attend town halls, sign petitions, engage in online campaigns, and fill courtrooms. Independence is no longer an idea whispered by political fringe groups. It has become a mainstream conversation, a catalyst for heated debates at workplaces, family dinners, and community events. The movement has grown from dormant frustration into a strategic force with timelines, legal structures, and energized supporters. What's truly shocking is the speed of mobilization. Citizen-driven petitions are exploding with engagement. The signature goals are tight, but people are treating signature collection like a civic duty. The Alberta Prosperity Project aims for 177,000 signatures, while the anti-separation movement claims to have collected over 450,000 signatures opposing separation, showing just how divided and energized the province is. These aren't small numbers. These are full-scale political mobilizations happening simultaneously, creating a province-wide tug-of-war.
Multiple sources are telling our colleagues at Radio-Canada this morning that list, this initial short list, will not include oil pipelines.
That is pulling national attention into the vortex. No protests, no marches, just highly efficient political operations running in parallel, both trying to shape the province's future before the deadlines close in. The legal showdown is equally intense, layered with constitutional questions, treaty rights, procedural challenges, and the fundamental question of whether a province can initiate a vote that might lead to altering the structure of the country itself. Court dates are being followed like episodes of a gripping series. A ruling is expected before Christmas, meaning Alberta could enter 2026 on the edge of a historic vote. The pressure surrounding that timeline is immense because it transforms the independence question from a theoretical debate into a ticking clock.
Yeah, it can. It's going to be a long haul, but I think it's a strong leadership on the part of the Alberta government to fill the void. Here's the problem. You know, David Eby is smart enough to know.
Every day feels like it carries weight. Every hearing is a turning point. Every statement from Ottawa, every comment from provincial officials, every media headline contributes to a perception that Alberta is inching closer to a point of no return. Supporters argue that the movement isn't simply about politics. It's cultural, economic, and deeply personal. Opponents say independence would create irreversible economic and political risks. Either way, the debate has reshaped the identity of the province. People ask, why should decisions affecting Alberta's economy, resources, and industries
Barrel a day pipeline going to the northwest BC coast that would generate about $20 billion a year in revenues. And so that seems like a pretty good value proposition.
It doesn't have First Nations consent, makes no financial or economic sense. It has no private proponent, no route, no private funding, and would cost taxpayers billions. On top of that, It threatens one of the world's most precious and intact ecosystems. It doesn't actually exist, and it won't exist. There's no private sector proponent that is advancing it, unless the federal and provincial government of Alberta pony up tens of billions of public dollars.
Be made hundreds of miles away. Why should Ottawa decide the pace of energy development or environmental regulation? How long should Albertans wait for structural reforms that address long-standing grievances? This movement isn't just about leaving. It's about redefining what power looks like in a federation where one province commands such immense economic weight. And the panic in Ottawa, real or perceived, fuels that momentum. Supporters point out how quickly federal officials respond to every development. Opponents worry that the political fire being stoked in Alberta could spread beyond the province. But no matter which side anyone is on, one thing is undeniable. Alberta has changed the conversation, and there's no going back to how things were before this moment. The countdown is real, the stakes are enormous, and the entire country is watching a province test the strength and flexibility of the Canadian Federation in a way that hasn't happened in modern history.
Trump and Mark Carney, the Prime Minister, raised the possibility of reviving the Keystone XL pipeline. It would run from northern Alberta to the U.S. Midwest.
Should it really be easier for us to deal with Donald Trump and get Keystone XL restarted and built down to the Gulf Coast? Should that be easier than building a new bitumen pipeline to British Columbia, Port of Prince Rupert, so that we can access Asian markets?
Political analysts, legal experts, business leaders, Indigenous leaders, and ordinary citizens are all caught in the gravity of this unfolding situation. It is fast-moving, emotionally charged, and rooted in decades of unresolved tension. Alberta's push isn't just a challenge to federal authority. It's a test of national unity. It's a reminder that identity, power, resource control, and regional autonomy are forces that don't disappear when ignored. They build, simmer, and eventually erupt into moments like this. As signatures gather, court rulings loom, and political rhetoric escalates, one question grows louder every day across the province. After everything that has happened, after all the momentum, after all the legal fights and political clashes, who or what can actually stop Alberta now? And with that, if you want to stay ahead of every twist, every ruling, every strategic move, make sure you hit that subscribe button, because this story is just beginning.